This is live from my office, and boy, is it good to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, how are you?
I'm good, Steve. You act like this is the first human contact we've had in months. Boy, it's good to see you.
Help me. Help me. Get me out of here. What a year. What a year. All right, update me. Everybody in your circle healthy?
This ain't wood, but yes, knock on wood. Everybody's healthy. I wish the country was as lucky as the Emanuels, so everybody's good.
Same here. Same in this house.
Same. We just, the one kind of passed just last week, the 1 year anniversary of my father passing away, but it was, we told a lot of great stories and stuff like that. But other than that, kids are healthy. Amy and I are healthy. Mom's healthy. Cousins and nieces and nephews are all healthy. Everybody's good.
Everybody was asking me about you because they know that Governor Christie was in the hospital, may still be there, and you guys shared a little set time. But you tested already, right? You're all good?
3 tests, 3 negatives, all no symptoms, still have the same taste, same smell. All the tests are negative. A more intense workout than ever before, et cetera. So nothing. And we're definitely past the 10 days.
All right.
I was in touch, and Chris is out of the hospital, but I was in touch with him throughout the period of time. I said, I need you to get better so I can start yelling at you again. Now I'm kind of being careful for you. Yeah,
but you know what, in all seriousness, and you know this, but I want to say this, the exchange that you two have, whether you're a calming influence on him as well or whatever, that's how political conversation should go.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you, but here's my point, here's your point. You're not screaming at each other. You're really not.
No, I mean, we disagree without being disagreeable, and there's actually a respect of, while you have that position, it's not like, there's a professional respect, and there isn't and I actually, if I can twist this a little, I know you find it shocking that I would try to make a point here for Joe Biden. If you look at all this stuff that's out there, polling-wise, et cetera, his point about talking about the soul of America, actually what's more important than the economy or COVID or anything, people know this thing's off the rails, and he has the demeanor, the tenor, and the temperament where they feel like he can actually restore a civility to our public life.
Yeah, and I want to talk about your last book, but let's jump in on the national side because, look, you know how I feel about Trump.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, the only one that likes Trump less than me is Melania.
Yeah.
But it's not a personal thing. I've known him since the 80s. You've come across him all those years as well. Personally, there's he's the same guy he was in the 80s.
Yeah.
He cannot be the president of the United States. That guy couldn't then, and he can't now. So with somebody with no conscience and no accountability, he can't be reelected because he'll have nothing to lose.
It's funny, anybody who DRR had ever worked in the office in and around not the Oval so much, but in there, but also the West Wing, inevitably the moment you become president-elect, that office changes you.
Right.
We've gone, it's true, whether it's Pierce, Buchanan, Tyler, or Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, Kennedy, but one person, he has been immune from the responsibility and the moral authority that comes with that office, and none of it has changed the character of the person. None of it has weighed in on the conscience of the individual.
And they'll study this for hundreds of years, psychologists will and doctors, but whatever's wrong with him, and trust me, there is something wrong with him, but whatever is wrong with him, to not understand the weight of that office, the importance of that office, and still get up every day and make it about him, just reinforces how much we have to get out and vote. I know the numbers are great already, but we got to get out and vote. And let me just toss this to you. I know how you feel about the vice president, and I'm a supporter, and I've loved him from afar. He may be 78 years old, but he's on it as much as he's ever been, hasn't he?
Look, I think Joe, the same person that we've known that either Drew, I worked with him as a senior advisor under Clinton, congressman, and then as chief of staff. And there's just a core in the DNA decency. CNN had done this special. I talked about when my father passed away.
Yep.
He was one of the first phone calls. And that speaks to the character of the individual. And I've had numerous conversations with him. Nothing gets past him. He'll probe you on it. If you make a point, he'll ask you some of the questions that need to kind of unravel the assumption of your argument. And so he's there making that stuff and fighting, and he knows what he wants to do.
And what about Senator Harris? Again, from afar, I'm a fan. She seems, I've never met her. I haven't spoken with her. What can you tell us about her?
Well, I think that, look, she has she's part of the future. She has an energy to her. She's been in the Senate 3 short years, but her record is strong. And she, I would say that if you had an adjective, fighter would be the one I would use to describe her. I mean, where I would see Joe, or the vice president rather, as persistent at it, kind of doggedly pushing something. She is, because it comes out of the attorney general kind of DNA, state attorney general in California, she's an advocate for, which is a kind of slightly different voice and tenor and outlook about how you push things.
Now, you know this better than anybody, but in the course of a 4-year term, getting everything done you talked about on a campaign trail, I don't care who you are, is impossible. You hope to have 3 or 4 or 5 major things that are considered, 2 or 3 that get through. How much of the Biden-Harris time is going to be spent just cleaning up the mess left behind?
A huge amount. I mean, I said this to the vice president in a conversation a couple ago, but I said, when President Obama came into office, things were broken, but obviously you could reset it. Here, it's on its back. That's a different thing. And, there are a multitude of things that the vice president's, not just the economy, the public health system, getting literally as fundamental but as essential as getting our kids back in school learning.
Right.
And so and giving everybody, both from parents to educators to the children, the confidence and the kind of the network to give them the ability to get back in school. There's just a limit. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm done Zooming.
Yeah.
And if we're adults and done, can you imagine being 8, 9, 10, or 11 and with multiple, if you have 2, 3 children? This is not the way to go about learning, educating, and that's a developmental process. So there's all these type of things that I think that it's not just broken. It's literally on its back, and it has to be you got to lift it up, put it on its feet, and move it forward. And so I think this is slightly, not slightly, I thought back in 2008 it was demanding. This is going to be more demanding than that.
Well, 2 pieces off of that. One is because of what you just said, I think Biden's the absolute perfect guy to do it because of his temperament, because of his empathy, but also because everybody returns his phone call. He's got respect around the world to take care of that piece of it. And he's been around Washington long enough. So many people want to poo-poo experience. Sorry, if I'm a plumber and I have experience, I'm better than the guy that doesn't have any experience at all. Politicians need to understand how Washington works. He gets it completely. So I think everything you described, he lines up as the perfect
so funny.
choice, even if he wasn't running against Trump.
Here's the thing. I always used to say when people say, "Oh, it's got to be run like a business." No, you can't take profit out of the private sector, and you're not going to take politics out of politics.
Right.
And the fact is, somebody has to be current. I mean, I was always for the vice president, but you got to be current, and you got to understand the currency of politics. And if you get somebody that doesn't get it, they're going to make a lot of rookie mistakes. And the other thing is, it's not like this president thought that he started to study what he did wrong. I mean, he has had plenty of opportunities along the way, Steve, to say, you know what, here's what I got wrong, and here's where I'm going to adjust. And who he was on day one is who he is today, and people are recoiling. And I just recently wrote a piece that, normally elections are about change versus the status quo, or a challenger versus an incumbent.
Right.
This is the first election we've ever had, which is change versus disruption. And this is more than the American people have bargained for. And when you look at all the problems that we're facing, Trump is seen as a source of that problem, where Biden has and is perceived as a source of a solution to that problem. And that's, in this environment, that's a more enviable position.
Now, you were in the meetings, and so you would know this better than anybody as well. When Biden accepts the VP's role, there was a lot of talk about how involved is he going to be. He's not going to be the guy that just goes to foreign leaders' funerals and things. Will he have the same open door to Kamala Harris that Obama appeared to have with Biden? And if I'm wrong about any of that, correct me.
Well, so one quick history lesson. There's no doubt that everybody says that Vice President Mondale changes the vice presidency. It was always what you said. And if you go back to it, and I do want to say this as a chief of staff, I think the Kennedy people made a massive mistake cutting LBJ out, given that Kennedy had spent very little time in the Senate. Lyndon Johnson was a master of the Senate. Their legislative agenda, given Kennedy's entire agenda, was stalled for the 3 years.
Yep.
And it took Johnson, and obviously, God forbid what happened to Kennedy. But Johnson, had he been incorporated, Kennedy would have seen more of his agenda in the early years done. The president understood that he had not been in the Senate very long, that Joe had, and that he was an invaluable asset. And he became a full partner, not just on other foreign policy, other things, but specifically just one end of Pennsylvania Avenue to another. And those relationships, that's an invaluable piece of politics. And so I think he goes to understand and knows that the vice president's office and the individual he selected is a full partner. And I want to add something. When you look at the debate and the VP debate, when Kamala kept referring to the vice president as Joe, it had a partnership quality to it, first name, base, etc. When Vice President Pence was referring to the president and the way he talked about the president, it was about the dutiful soldier. And it was because of the first name versus not, because of the kind of deference versus not. You had one as a built on the premise of a partnership, and the other one by language you could see revealed one of basically a deputy that followed all orders. Except
Sure, it's an interesting take.
Yeah,
yeah. No,
how they referred to President Trump and Vice President Biden by name or not was also inference, a way of revealing the way they saw their role and what they wanted. Trump doesn't want a partner. He wants
no, absolutely not.
He clearly wants somebody subservient. Vice President Biden, she calls him by his first name, clearly revealed a partnership role and a more intimate personal role and closeness. And I think those, by the way they talked about the other person, you could realize it was a window into how they saw the relationship.
Is there anything you can think of when you were chief that you had a big disagreement with Biden on that's, sticks in your head? I mean, there's people who would say you disagreed with everybody. I don't know that that's true.
I woke up many mornings disagreeing with myself. So that's not,
I can't be right about this. Yes, I am.
There's nothing that stands out that, this was there were places we disagreed. It was not like one that became a violent disagreement.
Yeah, you never walked out of the room going, this guy's an idiot, as Trump's people have done to him.
Yeah, it's not the violent disagreement I reserve for the Emanuel dinner table. The disagreement, the civil disagreements for the White House.
So, look, you have very unique qualifications to talk about all of this because chief advisor to Clinton, chief of staff to Obama, 3 terms in Congress, and mayor of the greatest city in the world.
Greatest city.
And you worked at Arby's. So obviously your extensive qualifications go on forever.
You know what? You know how great this is? When somebody said you could literally, no, I worked at Arby's. You can just do that. And
that's exactly right.
It's like, this gives you special parking permits.
You know why? You know why I know that? You walked out of the studio once and gave me that salute. I remember that specifically. So you look at the map. Everybody wants to talk about breaking this down. Obviously, the trend on turnout is huge. I personally believe, and maybe this is a little hallmark card, you're optimistic because we all have PTSD, and that's post-Trump stress disorder. Mm-hmm. Is this 2016 return and don't look at the polls, or is this going to be a big night for Biden and we'll know on November 3rd?
All right, so you'll know on November 3rd is my instincts. A couple things that I do, and I do this every day. When I go to sleep, at the end of the day, I always say, would you rather be Biden or Trump? And I have yet to go to sleep and say, boy, this has really changed the campaign. Second, what is different between 2020 and 2016? In no poll was Hillary nationally above 50.
Right.
Biden is consistently above 50, as recently as this morning, the Wall Street Journal NBC poll. Consistently tracking double digits. Hillary never had a double-digit lead. The best she ever had was 7. And when you're at or above 50 nationally, it's not like you're down 2 points in Florida. It's just that the math can't work that way. It's not like you're down 3 points in Pennsylvania. It can't work that way. And when you look at all the polls, take the upper Midwest, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He's up 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever different polls, but he's always 50 or above. His worst performance is 49. Trump has third. Trump has never, so one, comparing where Vice President is nationally to where Hillary was, and then state by state, that same comparison, it's like almost 6 points. If you step back and you look at both national numbers and also state numbers, they've all moved around 7 to 8 points from where Hillary was at this point to where Biden is at this point.
Right.
Lastly, the president has had a job approval stuck since 2016 at 42%. That's exactly the vote total he's getting. He's not getting 1 point more than his job approval. And for him to do anything, the third parties would have to get up to 5%. He would have to get every undecided, and the third party vote would have to come out of Biden right now. That's a lot to happen, and the only thing that could happen is an upcoming debate, possible. The sand left in the hour clock is very, very little.
Right, and it's not Biden's first rodeo. So,
well, the other rodeos weren't great rides. So let's just say.
So yeah, he'd admit it. Yeah.
88 and 2008 weren't great rides. Okay.
Nope.
So my thing is, look, this is a crazy year. So I'm not ready to, and I think we should use that 2016 flinch and kind of physical
flinch and the twitch are gone.
The physical tick you have to double down and make sure no stones unturned, voter conduct, et cetera, et cetera. But even if you get away from the presidential and you look at the Senate in some of these states like Colorado, Arizona, Iowa, North Carolina, battleground, or Maine, there's nothing happening in those races that would show you something else. So, and even then, if you go, we have now, as of today, 17 to 20 million votes. The people, I saw some statistic, almost 1/5, so 20% of all the vote is first-time voters.
How about that?
So this is not.
Maybe that's his legacy. He so screwed the job up. He moted everybody that wouldn't have gotten off the couch to get off the couch. I'd take that.
Well, I would not just say for an election. And as somebody with 3 children, 20, 21, and 23, I think I got that right. But I definitely have 3, and they're definitely out of the house. That I'll say.
I've seen the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. But my kids' generation of their peers, activism, civic engagement, is so dramatically different.
Than our generation.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so I think he has actually, his legacy will be a reinvention and a re-energizing of the civic life of this country and people's sense of citizenship.
Right.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Live from my office, presented by Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Look, David Hochberg is loud. David Hochberg is emotional. David Hochberg has a passion for helping you and helping me. How do I know that? Because he did. We did a home equity loan on our home, and he did the home equity loan because I trust him. That's the thing. All those years on the radio, I wasn't just talking about products. I was talking about products I spent money on or that I put faith in people on. And there's nobody I have more faith in than David Hochberg. I recommended that my daughter work with David Hochberg. He did. He got her mortgage for her first home, and she's thrilled and had a great experience. My sister just did her second home refi with David Hochberg. Look, he's good, and so is his team. And it's important that you know that you need somebody more knowledgeable, but also somebody that actually really cares about your outcome. And the local loan officer at the bank, I'm sure he's a swell guy, but that's not the same deal. Nor is Bob's House of Mortgages down the road. You need somebody that's the best in the business, and that's David Hochberg. Call him up at 855-56-DAVID. Go to 56david.com. You can refinance to pay off debt. You can do a reverse mortgage and find out all about reverse mortgages. Who are you going to call? Tom Selleck at his house? He's memorizing a script. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's bigger than I am, and he could probably still kill me with his bare hands, so don't tell him I said that. It's Team Hochberg, David Hochberg. I trust him. You can too. Whether you're purchasing a new home or just need help figuring out your money, you need Team Hochberg and David Hochberg. Let me give you the contact again. It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. All right, so last thing, because I want to get to you talking about your book. You asked me specifically. You said, don't talk about my book. I want to talk about it because I read it and I like it. But there's a lot of talk about people going, he's not going to leave. There are levers in place to make sure a peaceful transfer of power takes place, and it's never been challenged. And if it is challenged, I don't believe he'll want people coming into the Oval Office to pick him up and carry him out. Do you have any worry about that he won't leave?
Not really, because I actually think, look, I mean, President Obama won his reelected with 53% of the vote. I'm not saying Biden is, well, these polls have him as recently as this weekend at 53. Mm-hmm. That's a big number. And I think you're going to get, there will be one or two states early that Trump won that go to Biden.
Set the table.
And then it's just going to be, he's now got to, and that when they start flowing in, that's going to be pretty clear that one person is on the mow and one person is on their heels.
Yeah. And I think we know.
And I also think one last thing, I don't mean to get there, but I do not believe that the apparatuses that you have to, legitimate apparatuses that you have to touch, are going to do anything that would endanger this democracy.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you say
because
that.
They're also concerned about their own long-term legitimacy.
Yeah, right. Which brings me to this before we do that, and that is your reputation as a Washington prick, to me, has always been overblown. Mm-hmm. I saw you and got to know you a little bit as mayor, and who you are and what you're able to accomplish. Those aren't the same as your image. But having said that, being a tough guy in D.C. is needed. And you were a tough guy in D.C. The chief of staff, you've taught me this, and I've heard it from others who've done the chief of staff role. There's no higher stress job in Washington, period. Mm-hmm. So having said
it's the most thankless job in kind of the political, that echelon. It's the most thankless job.
But in 2008 through 12, say, is that the last period of any bipartisan behavior we're going to see? Because it's never been this broken, not in your lifetime, not in my lifetime, and in all the history of this, going back to when the redcoats were swinging by to set the place on fire. People need to hear that this is fixable. And it can all fall on Biden. But we're on the precipice here of a monumental disaster if he's reelected. If
Trump is reelected.
Yes.
Look, let me break up one thing, and I because I really do think this is not a bipartisan. Look, you'll have political squabbles, you'll have fights. I get all that. In 2008, the country was on the precipice of a major financial meltdown.
Yes.
But we were also 2 months away from a presidential, Senate, and House elections. And Democrats weren't in love with George Bush 43. When Speaker Pelosi got the call from the president and Hank Paulson, Secretary Treasurer, that we were 48 hours away from a pure 100% meltdown. The was, hey, we got 2 months of election. This is on your watch, sucker. Go.
Right.
And people got to remember, the bill that was finally voted on, the first time the Republicans walked away from President Bush, not the Democrats. And when before 2 months later or 3 months later, Barack Obama is taking the oath of office, there's a traditional bipartisan lunch afterwards, okay? Mitch McConnell declares, not an inch, not giving you nothing. Now, the president has 4 more years. George Bush had 2 months. One is a lame duck, one is a beginning person with a broken financial system, a broken economic system, a broken automotive system, 2 longest wars. And Mitch McConnell's sense of patriotism was, you get nothing.
Right.
Zip. Zilch. And having spent, I was locked up in Harry Reid's office with Susan Collins, Olympia Snow, Arlen Specter, and Ben Nelson to get the final votes for the President's Recovery Act. Mitch McConnell was doing everything he could to try to get those 3 Republicans out of there. So when everybody says, oh, it's just I'm just sorry. We're going to have a history. It is not equally distributed for how it got broken. It's just not. And you're looking at a person who I was chair.
Well, I don't disagree with that at all.
Well, I was chair of the DCCC, trying to take back the House. When George Bush gave a speech and was talking about early childhood education, I actually sponsored the bill.
Right.
And I'm trying to clobber the Republican Party. But I'm sorry, this really does sit. You can start the genesis with Newt Gingrich, et cetera. But Mitch McConnell's idea of bipartisanship is I get 100% of what I want, and you get to watch me eat it.
Right. And it goes to the Supreme Court thing that's going on now, where how dare the Democrats hold the Republicans to the rule they broke to reestablish the rules? How dare they bring up something? It's absolutely ridiculous, but it creates such apathy. Right. That's why I'm very happy to see what's happened, because I don't identify as a Republican or a Democrat, and I've never been more in the middle in my life, but the Republican Party is not the Republican Party. There's some bizarre Lord of the Rings version of it going on now. And a healthy Republican Party is crucial. I don't know if we'll ever see it again.
Senator Alan Simpson from Wyoming.
Love him.
Yeah. Great guy. He once called, he says, I know you think we're a bunch of Visigoths on knuckle draggers. I said, well, let's kind of add that. I said, that's a descriptive term, and I do. we were negotiating something.
Sure.
But he knew that there was a part of the Republic where he says that some elements of our party that are a bunch of knuckle dragging Visigoths, barbarians. So, that's him. He said that. And I want to quote him because that was an eloquent way of describing some elements of the Republican Party that used to be a minority and has become the face and voice of the party.
All right, let me switch to your book here, because I really enjoyed it. And it's called
The Nation City.
The Nation City. Why Mayors Are Now Running the World. Thank you. I got to ask something up front. You open with this story about your grandfather. I know how much you loved your grandfather. Mm-hmm. But the Big Banga, the nickname he got back, I didn't know until I read your book that he slipped onto a ship on the Black Sea at the age of 10 years old with a bunch of useless coins in his pocket, somehow not only made it to the United States, made it to Indiana, and found family, eventually to Chicago, your grandfather. I mean, it's just incredible. It's goosebumps.
But it is, he is not the only one that walked that journey, made that journey, or figured out how to get from the Atlantic coast into Indiana, from Indiana up to Maxwell Street.
And not speaking the language either.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about what I did with our 3 at 10 years old on a boat by yourself, never to see your family again. Amy barely lets them out of their sight. I mean, or me for that matter. I should just say Amy. So it's an incredible, and he comes here, works a ton of odds and end jobs, doesn't have anything but at best a 5th grade education, and was for everything from a truck driver to a steel, worked in the steel mills, Wisconsin steel on the south side, and then meat cutter. And I mean, there were things in there I never, but we always saw him at the kitchen table. He and grandma lived with us. He was in his boxers, his tank top, his knee-high socks, and his slippers. And you wouldn't know it looking at me, but he was 6'4". He's a former professional boxer. And
Giant hands, right? You write that in the book.
Giant. I mean, when he smacked you, you just flew until you hit something to stop the forward momentum. I mean, and I remember that. But he also, he had that education. My grandfather, you ever remember Scandinavian meets here in Chicago?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Grandpa won that in a poker game. And then about 6 months later, he lost Scandinavian meets in a poker game. And he asked the guy, he said, now he also was a horrible businessman, but he got to keep a truck driver job as a truck driver of Scandinavia. And I remember downstairs in our refrigerator, in our freezer, the white paper, black ink, SKT, skirt steak, FLK, flank. We always had a half a cow down in the basement freezer. And I could tell you, and Grandpa on Saturdays, dozen eggs, a loaf of bread, 3 skirt steaks. That was breakfast to start your Saturday. Obviously, none of the protein had any impact on my height or svelte body there. But that's what, and he.
That's the swimming.
But he was all 100% immigrant. You came here, and you're not to screw it up because you do not bring shame on the family. And everybody else suffered, so you could have this, make something of it.
Yeah, and I know it's something you've repeated time and time again. And obviously, your parents are your primary influence, but you had a huge impact on your life, and I assume Ari and Zeke as well.
I will say one anecdote. I don't know if I've said this before. But he lived with Grandpa and Grandma lived with us for 2 years beyond the Sundays every time at their house. My grandmother on my father's side lived with us for 8 years. It's been written. I didn't want to do. I want to stay in Congress. I wasn't eager to go back to the White House when President Obama asked me to go back.
Sure.
And when I was talking to Zeke, I said, I really don't want to do this. And he says, what would Grandpa say? And I said, Grandpa would say that when the President of the United States asks you to do something, it's either yes or yes, sir. And you just got to decide which one it is.
Based on that statement, have you changed your number so Biden doesn't have it?
I've gone to a block. You block all calls. Okay.
What would you do? What would you do if Biden's elected? I need you.
Please. No, that's a jinx. You don't talk about it.
Okay? But no. I get it. But that's a tough call for you. I'm just saying.
No, it's not. I'm not talking about it.
I didn't ask you to. I'm just saying that's not an easy phone call.
Well, then
you admit that's not an easy phone call.
Right. You do is you make sure there's a lot of static.
So in your book about the importance of being mayors in cities in this country, you talk about the courage of Mayor Landrieu in New Orleans and Garcetti in L.A. And all the stuff you had to get done in Chicago is no pushover. The reason we have cranes rising above the city and all the building that went on, at the riverfront done. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the things you're most proud of is pre-K for every kid.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, what I'm proud of is the entire kindergarten to college experience. 2 things. One, you're going to see a big study coming out next week in the University of Chicago about how we flipped, and because we made pre-K universal, how much that's advantaged young kids of poverty and specifically minority kids, where it used to be exclusively a club of only white wealthy kids in Chicago. And he's coming out of the University of Chicago. Second, just 2 weeks ago, the first city ever in the United States of America to make this a policy, which we did, Janice Jackson and I, that to graduate and get your diploma, you had to have a post-high school education plan, meaning a letter of acceptance from either a college, community college, a branch of armed services, a vocational school. Right. 97.5% of the Chicago kids accomplished that goal. No school system, suburban, urban, or rural in America had ever tried it. And that means that not just the Cochran kids and the Emanuel children know what they're going to do next, but when you have a bunch of kids who don't think they're going to make it to the age of 21 to be alive, start thinking about asking themselves the question, where am I going to be when I'm 21? Not whether I'm going to be alive.
Right.
That changes what you do day in and day out. And to me, one of the proudest thing I think about the tenure is that we had 8 successive years of high school graduation growth at record highs each year. And more importantly, record highs of kids going on to college, community college. And if you asked a social scientist, they would have said, not those kids, not from that family, not that neighborhood, not that zip code. And our kids in Chicago beat all the odds. I think
it's one of the things that you were able to prove, and that is don't discount a kid because of who he is, where he's from, and the house he lives in, and the block he lives on.
Yeah, but it was also interesting, again, 100%. It was not only this, and here's one thing I would just say. Too much time is spent just about the school. That's 20% of a child's life. 80% is outside. That means all the stuff that other families can do on soccer, tutoring, baseball, summer camp, we have to do for kids that don't have access to that opportunity. And it's not a coincidence that the very time our graduation and college attendance was going up, we were making record investments in mentoring, after school, summer jobs. So other kids who never used to have those support systems not only got them, succeeded because of what was happening outside of school. And I don't think we actually, as a country, when we always define this, debate it, discuss it, we don't really take a holistic approach. We figure out what's going on between 8 and 3. Well, I want to know what's going on before 8 and after 3.
Sure.
So we can figure out if 8 to 3 is a success.
Right. Because of that 80%. I run into people all the time. I'm sure you do as well. They go, I want to help. I don't know what to do. And I'm not just talking about rich white folks living in the suburbs, whether they be west or north. There's some really good people who don't know what to do. And I recommend charitable organizations, including the hardworking folks downtown. But I understand why people are concerned and why they want to help, but they can't, because I think you and I have talked about this. 99% of the people in the toughest neighborhoods in Chicago want the same thing people want in Lake Forest and Naperville and everywhere else. They just want to live their life and be able to have their kids go to school safely and thrive.
Exactly, 100%. Once, I don't mean to do this. I was talking to, it's interesting you say this. So anyway, wherever a parent is, once you have a child, that whatever happens, that DNA kicks in. And basically parents want this, regardless of background, the same thing in your child. Not everybody may have the instruments and the tools and the history to do it, but the desire is there. And in certain cases, then we got to step forward where you don't have it. I could never do what I did if I didn't have my parents as role models. I mean, I did swear growing up, I'm never going to do what they did. And then I find myself doing 100% exactly what they did. But if you don't have that background, then somebody else has to help your children.
I'll let you go on this, and I really appreciate all the time, and I hope we can do it again. And I know you're going to follow me on Twitter and make sure you know when Live from My Office is on.
Yeah. But I am going to do the background a little different. The baby blue just doesn't work for you, Steve, on the background.
Right?
No,
I like what reflects off my head.
It's not reflecting, but I do think I'm like looking for a little moon and start a quarter moon.
Oh, yeah.
I want to come and grab those cheeks just like Stevie.
What would you recommend for the background? Something dark and foreboding? I don't know. I'm on blues and blacks all the time. I don't know what to put back there.
I'm going to put some old rock and roll posters.
There you go. Or the Steve Martin Let's Get Small album cover.
How about the Kiss? How about the Kiss old posters? Okay.
Yeah. Well, in my case, it might be more Linda Ronstadt. But before we go, how much I love the city of Chicago. Yeah. You love the city of Chicago. My heart breaks for everything that's gone on this year, but I am optimistic because of the people of the city of Chicago. Am I missing anything?
No, I mean, look, I never bet against the children of the city of Chicago. Don't bet against the people. They love this city. They care about the city. They want to be engaged in the city. And while, I would just say that the city of Chicago has all the capacities to not only succeed, but to excel in the future. And the primary thing is because it's made up of rich, diverse culture that share a passion for the city they call home.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Talking about reverse mortgages with David Hochberg. Why does this get a bad rap? I mean, can you really trust these loans?
Here's the deal. My mom was in a wheelchair. She had MS. We converted the living room into her bedroom, bought a hospital bed in there because she couldn't get up and down the stairs. We built a ramp so her mobile wheelchair there could go up and down the stairs.
Sure.
It got to a point where the only asset that my parents had was the house they were living in. So I kept telling them we need a reverse mortgage. We need a reverse mortgage. They're like, no. I hear bad things about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm in the industry. These are great loans. Paid for the appraisal, paid for the counseling, which we now have a company that we work with that gets grant from HUD, so you don't have to pay for it. Long story short, I was going to put my parents into a reverse mortgage, Steve, if their house appraised for what my dad thought the house was worth. I did everything that I could possibly do to get my parents set up to take out this product. Do you really think I'm going to put my parents into a product that's dangerous, a loan product?
Exactly.
Hell no.
But here's the thing, because you hit on it, and I don't want people to lose this. There's all this information out there, and then there's the myths that are out there. And the myths that are out there is, that's how they get you. That's what my dad would always say about stuff. That's how they get you. That's how they get you. That's how they get your house. They're not taking your house.
It gives you the option. You get a mortgage statement, like any other mortgage statement, and you have the option to make the payment or defer the payment. Okay? And a lot of individuals, experienced homeowners, has the option. You're going to get a mortgage statement. You're a grown person. You've made financial decisions all your life. You could either take that money that you would have set aside for the mortgage payment to make your mortgage payment and work your principal down, or you could take that money and go on the bus. Well, you can't go on the bus anymore because nobody's going on the bus, but I used to use this example. Get on the bus and go downtown with your friends from the community center, go see a play.
Right.
Right? Maybe buy a plane ticket and go see your family. Just what do you worry about paying a house off that's already paid off or almost paid off when you could eliminate that payment and live out the rest of your life?
By the way, we'll remind you, whenever we talk to Mr. Hochberg, it's easy to get a hold of him. All you got to do is pick up the phone and call 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Yeah, boy, here we go again. I was afraid this would happen. I thought we'd be able to wrap up in time, but not so much because he's on the phone. Hello, President Trump.
Hello, Cochran. Hey, I have great news for you. The CDC just announced that COVID-19 cannot be transmitted via brown nosing or ass kissing. So Lindsey Graham and Sean Hannity have nothing to worry about.
Well, that's a relief. Very much so.
Hey, by the way, you know how you could maybe add a little pizzazz to this segment of the podcast?
What's that?
Play the Village People's Macho Man when I come on.
Sir, Macho Man, I don't know if you're trying to convince you or me, but this isn't a music radio show. This is a podcast.
I love that song.
Yeah, you love it.
I love that song.
You love it. Okay.
Look, Macho Man is great. I start dancing like an older relative at a wedding, pumping my fists in the air and white man overbite and all that. I love it. Not in a I'm running around in a leather thong with assless chaps kind of way, but more of a tough Sly Stallone kind of way, okay? Mike Pence loves the Village people. Don't you, Mike? You love the Village people.
More than you will ever know, sir.
You're a strange bird, Mike.
Boy, isn't that the truth? All right, so you're post-COVID, allegedly. How do you feel?
Absolutely tremendous. Can I tell you, my appetite is back now. In fact, this morning I said I was so hungry I could eat a horse. And normally that's just a sex joke I make about Stormy Daniels. She's the original super spreader. You knew that, right?
I've seen some of the films. So, Mr. President, your doctors, including Dr. Fauci, may say you're no longer contagious, and you've taken advantage of that with all the rallies you've had. But honestly, you're really feeling good, sir?
Well, I'm feeling incredibly good, and I just want to take a moment to thank all the wonderful people, so many people who sent me get well cards and letters. They were so great. I'm assuming they were. I didn't actually read them. I just threw them away because, I'm not a broad or something.
Let's talk about those drugs that you were taking to combat coronavirus.
Lots of drugs. Look, I will tell you, these meds are very powerful, Cochran. Actually, I haven't been this high since I spent a couple minutes in the Celebrity Apprentice dressing room with Gary Busey.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to get downstream on that. You still taking that strong steroid?
Yeah, I was on the steroid called dexamethasone. That's a $5 word, which may explain why my tweets have been extra aggressive lately with all caps. Lots of Twitter aggression out there, believe me. In fact, I was so disoriented from the fever at one point, early on when I went to Walter Reed, I actually took a phone call from my daughter Tiffany, and I told her I loved her. I was definitely not myself. But honestly, I haven't felt this healthy in 20 years. 20 years. The steroids have helped a lot. And I'm now considering a full pardon for Barry Bonds.
Well, all the dots seem to connect. Now, let me rephrase the question. What drugs are you taking now?
Okay, all I'm taking now is a little maintenance dose of liquid remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine. And I got to tell you, they're both really great to dip your McDonald's fries into.
Oh, okay.
Believe me.
Okay, yeah.
Very tasty. Yeah, COVID-19 is apparently no match for a diet of grease, fat, salt, sugar, and steroids. It's a winning combination.
Well, look,
Combination.
I've got to say, sir, you sound like you've got all your energy back.
Yep, I'm Mr. Healthy, and Sleepy Joe isn't. I mean, seriously, if his body was a car, its check engine light would be on all the time. And Biden's campaign is a total disaster, I hate to tell you. It's weak, it's brittle, and it's going in the completely wrong direction. It's like Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott's foot. Ouch.
Oh, yeah, that was awful. Look, about the comment you made at your rally saying you could kiss everybody?
Everybody. I want to kiss everybody. I love to kiss everybody. Look, I want to kiss everyone because I feel so young and vibrant. Young and vibrant, like back in my Access Hollywood bus days. So I was all ready to go. By the way, contact tracing, that was just my term for taking women furniture shopping, okay?
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
Look, I was ready to go out there and kiss everybody, okay, because I'm a nice guy. But then I changed my mind because it would probably upset some of the unattractive women in the crowd, and that would totally confuse a lot of the heterosexual guys, too.
Sounds like you'd rather kiss some of the better-looking guys than some of the women you call unattractive, but, maybe that's just me.
I'll pretend I didn't hear that.
Are you concerned that your rallies could lead to some super spreading there, Mr. President?
Are you kidding me? You can never be too crowded at a Trump rally, okay? There's no super spreading. We're just having a big party. Have you seen Sleepy Joe's rallies? I almost feel bad for him. I don't think they qualify as an actual rally. Joe's rallies look more like a tent sale at a car dealership that forgot to advertise.
All right, look, but finally, Mr. President, you've tweeted you want people to volunteer to be poll watchers. Now, why don't you explain what a poll watcher is and what the qualifications are so they know what they're getting into?
No, I didn't say poll watching. I said that would be considered voter intimidation and illegal. No, not poll watching. I said I wanted to be pole dancing.
Oh,
pole dancing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my supporters should all watch pole dancing on Election Day.
That does seem to make more sense. Well, as always, thanks for calling President Trump.
Later, loser.
30 years plus on the airwaves, you have turned your dial to me. Now you're tuned into my podcast. It's live from my office, Steve. From Ithaca, New York, to Carolina South, W. Cochran Steve. From Minneapolis and then Chicago twice, top-rated shows achieved. Sit back, relax, and now listen to my show. When or wherever you are, 'cause you're on the go. A-list celebs with some laughs and great info. Live from my office, the Steve Cochran Podcast Show. Yeah. No better place to be. Yeah. Subscribe and like for free. Yeah. Live from my office, Steve. So glad you're with me. It's live from my office, Steve.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments. And that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event. And occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.